Well, hello and welcome to the From Busy to Rich podcast. I'm your host, Andy Traub. Our podcast exists to inspire advisors like you to increase your profitability and also your quality of life, but not just for yourself, but also for those that you serve. I want to welcome back to the show, as always, Mr. Wes Young. Hello, Wes.
Hey, Andy.
And Justin is with us as usual. Justin, I'm glad you were here.
It's a pleasure to be here, sir.
We have had quite a robust conversation before the recording started, and so we'll just keep that rolling. And we're going to use a quote, which I think maybe you've mentioned once before, Wes, but it's one of those quotes that I love the way you said it. It haunts you.
Yes.
And I think it haunts you in a beautiful way, right? It's full of conviction and freedom and truth. And it also just, it's also, there's also a weight to it. So what is the quote, Wes?
Yes. So this quote is by Richard Koch. And here it is. It says, "It is not shortage of time that should worry us, but the tendency for the majority of time to be spent in low quality ways."
So let's, agree to the parameters of that. Let's assume that we have a lot of time. We've got 80 years. We've got 90 years, whatever it might be. That people go, oh, life goes by fast. Okay. But you ever had a really long day, right? Today might be a long day. That let's assume that this quote is true and that we actually have plenty of time. We've got plenty of time to change ourselves, to become the person we want to be, to get great at something, to build a family, to build a business, to serve people well, to reach goals, to get the most out of this time we have on this earth. Let's assume that's true. So what this gentleman is saying is that the problem is not that we don't have enough time. The problem is the way we spend it is that most of us spend it, or many people spend it, in low quality ways. Let me tell you real quick on a very sort of surface level where I find this and I see this the most is, I think this has been true of all of time of humanity, but I think that, information, the amount of information that we have in our hands and our phones, I think about, as my son was begging me to get TikTok this last week, and I was still, nope, I just think that there is such a tremendous amount of time that people spend just consuming completely unnecessary and unimportant information, and they do small things with it. That's a low quality way of spending your time. Or even in conversations, talking about the weather, that's a low quality way of connecting with someone. So help me have context for this, Wes. What does this look like, in your opinion? Take the gloves off. What does this look like for those who are listening? What are they doing that's a low quality way of spending their time?
Yeah, Andy. So if I could go back in time and have a conversation with me when I was, 24 and started in this business, I could have told that young man a number of ways that he was spending his time in low quality ways, a number of activities, a number of thought processes, a number of things he was doing that really didn't move the needle at all in his life. And I think that is one of the reasons we love the podcast and we love the classes that we teach, is because we want you to learn from other people's experience, not have to experience the same thing everybody else did.
Yeah.
And so there are ways to do this business that are less effective, in my opinion, from an impact standpoint, and less enjoyable and less profitable. And when I can think about like one single thing that automatically, for the advisors, that we've seen hundreds and hundreds of these transform in this, that radically have a ripple effect throughout their entire practice and transform the way they spend their time.
Yeah.
It is in the journey to being paid for your advice. And I think we need to make some distinctions there, Andy, because you know this well because you talk to hundreds of advisors all the time, and you ask them a question about how they're compensated. I'd love it if you kind of speak to that and some of the things you hear.
Yeah. So, when I meet with people, whether they're thinking about joining our network or they're coming to one of our events, or we have this planning readiness score that we give people, this evaluation we made. And I just simply ask the question, do you get paid for planning? And, I am, surprised, appalled, and astounded the amount of people that look me straight in the eye and say, yes. And then I say, well, how much do you charge? And they'll say, well, I include it in my AUM. And, I'm not quite sure I have the right analogy or metaphor for that, but it's like, is Elon Musk in the tire business? No, he's in the car business. The tires just sort of come with it. It's just not true. It's not true that you get paid for planning. You don't, because there's no way to separate it. Like McDonald's is not in the ketchup business, right? Like, because they don't sell it separately. Unless you sell it separately, you're not charging for it. And I would say you're not really valuing it. And so again, I think again, the spirit of this is, are you spending your time on the right things?
Right. Yeah. And I would, Andy, one kind of proof of concept on this, that it has been a great indicator. And we actually teach this in our class, Transform, and, which they can get on our West Young Live, website. But when we talk about transitioning clients that we took on clients, 20 years ago that never paid a fee, and we were very much more transactional. We weren't being paid for our advice. We got there pretty quick, but you always have that holdover of people that you just never went back to on, like, hey, now we get paid for this. But you evolved, you got tremendously better, and we offered that same process to them, and we noticed that we were doing it. And one day we said, hey, we should be paid for that advice. And we do get paid. And we do get to, for managing your money, and we do get paid for products we put in place. But in our annual strategy sessions, after we've gone through the level of conversation we have with them now, and we say, hey, by the way, all of our legacy clients, we're moving them all to our, what is our model for all of our new clients? And that is where we charge an annual retainer fee. And so you're going to be on that now to continue to do what we do in this way. And that starts next month. And all of them, to this day, hands down, said, no, that way makes sense. Wes, you do a great job for us. And we totally get it. So it's a very different experience, Andy. And I think that the really tricky part here, and I can give a lot of analogies on it, is there's a lot of people listening right now. And please hear what I'm saying. I'm not against managing money. I'm not against also putting insurance in place. We do all that, right? We do it really, really well. That's table stakes. But there is something about when you are valuable enough to be paid independent of whether you do any of that, the level of curation of great ideas you have to develop is so much better than when you are not being paid separately for your advice alone. I mean, it is and it's because we use the same words a lot. Yes, I do holistic planning. Well, that means something different to me. It means I get paid independent of whether I place a product or manage money at all. And people are so excited about it. Now, we do all those things for them, but they're so excited about it. They're like, yep, I'm in. Versus someone that says, yeah, we do holistic fee-based financial planning. We just wrap that fee into our AUM model. Well, no, you don't. It's just simple. And if you want to stay in that world, I'm fine. I just believe this with all my heart. I believe you'll enjoy your business a lot more. I think you will increase your profitability. I think you'll be more profitable to your clients because the eye can only see, the ear can only hear what the brain is looking for. And if you've not told your brain, we are paid separately, whether we do any of this stuff or not, to be curators of great ideas. You seek out massive value-based ideas to the clients that you serve. And it's things that you just never probably would have come across. You never would have noticed it because you're not being paid independent for it. And you're not a bad guy and you're not a bad girl, right? It's more of a function of just, it's natural in what you're approaching and what you're trying to do there.
So I don't, again, our hope is not to, our goal is not to belittle or discount the value that people provide currently through AUM and putting policies in place. But the idea that, that you're spending your time on the wrong things, right? I mean, I don't know if there's been a situation, Justin, that whether it's when you were in service or out in civilian life that doing something and you realize an hour later, this is not the best use of my time. Like that was wasted. You know what I mean? I'm thinking of some project I had where I had painted something and you let it dry and you come back and you realize that paint is not going to stick to that. I used the wrong kind of paint. You know what I mean? And it's just like, and the idea that, I had enough time. I just was doing the wrong thing. Right. And in this industry, I do think that people have a lot of time. They can say they're busy, but like most people essentially own their own business. It might be under the umbrella of a company, but shouldn't it haunt us that you can do whatever you want? And then because you can do whatever you want and spend your time however you like, you can end up doing the wrong thing the whole time or with most of the time. And the wrong thing being planting your flag and saying, I'm so special because of how I do AUM and the policies I have. In reality, you're not actively. There are some people that really actively manage money. I don't think we're talking to them. But it's a little scary, and I want it to be that you might be spending most of your time doing something that's really not that unique.
Yeah, and I think it does because this is a podcast to inspire advisors to increase profitability and quality of life. And there is just time and time again, I can tell you people that have gone through our transform within the first couple of sessions, this switch flips, Andy, and they recognize that this isn't about doing a plan. It's about being a planner, which is different. I want to come back to that.
Yeah.
And they begin the process of charging for their advice, and the language they use and the confidence they carry and the fun they have and the impact they make is not smaller with that client. It's much, much bigger. So it is, and they go, man, why did it take me so long to actually think about how to process through this?
Well, let me give people a break, which is, this is still weird. Like it's still unique to say, I work in financial services and, my phone just randomly started playing a song. That's interesting. But I'm in financial services and yet I don't really provide any services. I'm just selling stuff, right? Like, isn't there something that I don't want to say it's not their fault, but like, that's just the system. Here's a simple example. And maybe I've shared this before. I feel really bad for people that choose to work in McDonald's. And let me just tell you why. Because they've chosen to be within a system that has so many constraints that sometimes they can't do the right thing. They can't do the best thing for the customer. Because I remember my wife going to use a coupon for a cone she'd gotten from our kids playing in Little League, and the local McDonald's had given all these kids free ice cream cones. And the lady at the drive-thru said, "Ma'am, we're out of cones." Okay. Can you just put it in a dish? Well, no, a dish is different than a cone, ma'am. Okay, but you're out of cones. Can you just put the ice cream in a dish? Well, yeah, but your coupon is for a free cone, ma'am, not a free dish. And my wife just had to just drive away because there was nothing in that woman's brain that she was talking to that could equate that she should just put the flippin' ice cream in a dish.
Sure.
And then hand it through the window. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, it's funny when it's ice cream, but it's not so funny when it's $5,000 and $10,000 planning clients that people don't get because they just go, "Oh, that's not what I do. We don't do that here."
Yeah. And, again, to go back to this idea is most of us, frankly, when you came into the business, you inherited an approach to the business. You didn't decide it. You came in and they said, "This is what we do. We make money when we gather assets and when we place insurance policies." And to get to that point, you got to be smart. You got to have good ideas and good context that gets them to that as quickly as possible. And so I'm not saying that was bad or wrong. I'm saying it's a bigger deal that it still exists and you'll do more of it, frankly, and it'll be more fun. This is just saying, don't just inherit the approach, design the approach, do life by design, not by default. Yeah. So this is a way we're at least seeing it. And for most people, that's all it takes. Andy, you've seen this over and over again in all the classes and our communities that we involved in. All it takes is getting somebody in a room to see it done a different way. And again, eyes sees, ear hears what the brain is looking for. Yeah. All of a sudden, they're on the airplane ride home.
Yeah.
And they immediately engage in a different context conversation. And what happens 6 months later is you have the same conversation with them. They are so much better. They're so much more valuable because they are paid for their advice by itself. It is a high quality way to spend your time becoming an advisor that gets paid for their advice. I cannot stress it enough. And if I'm wrong, here's the thing, and I'm not, but let's pretend for a second that somebody's out there going, well, I think Wes is wrong. What does it hurt if I'm not asking you to do this forever? I'm saying if for the next 6 months, one, you engage in an environment like Transform, or you just go buy a module or a planning module on Wes Young Live. You listen to it, small investment in your human capital. One, if you never charge fees after this, you'll still be, your language will be better. You'll have more clients. You'll have more fun and your clients will appreciate it. But if you do this process for 3 months, you are going to be so dramatically different. You're going to have more fun, and you can always go back to the other way if you've tried it on. I just think once you've worn this shirt, Andy, you're never going to go put the other old outfit on. It doesn't fit you anymore because you're in a better condition to help people.
Right. So when we talk about, a low quality use of your time, essentially just doing the wrong thing, wasting, I think about this. I don't know how many times you've been in a social situation where, this has happened multiple times, and maybe I'm around too many potlucks or something, but like, you ever see there's a table and people are going to eat food for a buffet and everybody just lines up on one side of the table and they're all walking. And I'm like, there's two sides to that table and we could go twice as fast if half of you just walked on the right side. Why? Like, it's this idea that, like, why are we all doing it this way? Well, because the person in front of me did it that way. I won't say who this was, my wife, but I was picking her up from the airport and I was like, hey, where are you guys? And she's like, we're by where people are getting in cars. I said, I think you're below me. Yeah. Like, she was on the wrong level to get picked up. She goes, I was just following everybody. And I go, well, that's a problem. Yeah. They led you astray, honey. They led you to Uber, and you don't go to Uber. You got to go to your husband. You know what I mean? The Uber was below me. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hard part. It's like, it's just not what most people are doing.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, Andy, is people get lost in the today. They don't often take time, as we talk about in our podcast all the time, to really paint that, if I could have it look any way, my future. And it's out there. Maybe it's 3 years. We like to use that number a lot. What does life look like in a day in the life of me? Have I just turned up the volume and tried to run faster and work harder the way we've always done it? Or am I playing a different game? And it's, there's that, quote we talked about a couple of times ago, that Kevin Costner movie, Draft Day. And he's talking about it in the context of players. And he says, nobody can stop time, but the great ones find a way to slow it down. And I kind of see that in our world, is that everyone's got the same amount of time. The great ones find a way to slow it down because they use it in higher quality ways.
Yeah. But we know this is true because there are people that do these deals, right? And you're like, you can flip a house. People always flip houses a lot more. But you see this, there's certain transactions where, there's certain companies, it's like, we're going to make our money 10 cents at a time. And there's other ones who are like, no, we're going to make our money $5,000 at a time. Like they've made a decision about what kind of transactions they want to do. And one of the things that we teach and you teach is that you get to decide to some degree that number. And so it goes from, boy, I hope they buy this policy because I get this level of commission, or I hope they, to like, no, this is my minimum fee. Right? Like, when you go buy a car somewhere, they know what business they're in. And I don't want to discourage people. I want them to, sort of for the scales to fall off their eyes and for them to see clearly, like, you actually get to decide what business you're in, even though you've been in one kind of business for a long time. And it's really as simple as a choice. Yeah.
Andy, we have a narratives checklist that our Transform students get, and it's 100, like over 100 different bullet points. And these are it's kind of like if you're sitting on the sideline of an NFL game and you're the coach, they've got the big glossy laminated sheet that has all the different, bullets for their plays, because they're watching the dance of the game and going, this one, this one, this one.
Yeah.
And what was funny is I was with an advisor that is a great guy, and he just inherited an approach, and he was asking me, I'm trying to gain the understanding of the difference. And I said, well, he was like, what do you say that's different that I'm not talking about? Because if ultimately we're both managing money and we're both putting in place product, I just don't understand. And I said, well, let's talk about some of those. And I don't know, I rattled off like 2 ideas. And he said, Wes, I just don't see how that leads me to an insurance sale. And I said, yeah, but how much insurance did you sell last year? And he told me the number, and I said, and I wasn't trying to be mean at all. I was just trying to help him, right, in this. I said, well, so we sold about 5 times that last year. And this guy's pretty, I said, so these ideas, although, it is a different game we're playing here, doesn't mean I do any less of the other stuff. Yeah. So, I'm playing a different game than you. You're trying to get to insurance sale as fast as you can, or manage money as fast as you can. I'm trying to increase this person's profitability and quality of life. That is my game that we're playing. And to do that, I've got a whole great loop of ideas, and I get paid for it. And we do all the other stuff.
Well, it reminds me of when, I don't know if Dr. Phil is still on. I think that show might be over. But I remember, when he had first came out, Oprah sort of made Dr. Phil Dr. Phil. He was, he was in private practice, and then he was on her show a couple times, and then he got his own show. And one of the famous questions that Dr. Phil would ask people is, how's that working for you?
How's that working for you? Yeah.
Right. And the reason it's a great question is because he's not judging. He's actually asking them to judge. Yeah. He's not saying you're a mess or you're missing out. He'll just say, how's that going for you? I was unfortunately able to visit, a young man I know that was, in a mental health facility just a few months ago. And we were just talking about life. And you're not actually supposed to talk about treatment, which I thought was interesting when you go visit, because like this kind of place he wasn't allowed to leave.
Yeah.
So I just talk about life, but don't talk about treatment, So we would just talk about life and what he was doing and the things he was watching and the people he's hanging out with and the kind of movies he watched and his plans for the future. And I said, I pulled old Dr. Phil. I said, well, how's that working for you? And he kind of looked around and he's like, not very good, because I'm here. You know what I mean? And you don't do that to belittle people, but I think that you can ask yourself that question, like, how's that working for you? Because if you don't like the answer, the great news is you have options.
I love that because it comes, what I love is a couple things there is like people that listen to this podcast that are not charging for their advice. Some of them would say, my life's great. I love the way we're doing it. It's the approach we love. And so I'm fine if when you've observed the alternatives, you still believe that. And maybe their win's different, than ours. The thing is though, what we've observed time and time again is it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to get somebody in an environment where they see another way possible for them to go, okay, I don't hate what I've got, but boy, I like that better. Yeah. I would sure love to wade into that. And the only way you get there is by exposing yourselves to people outside your own echo chamber. The people that are constantly saying, no, this is the way. And here's the reasons why we're rejecting new. And I think it's so critical to exploration.
This reminds me, I was watching a video some people listening might know who Grant Cardone is. And he's been in this sort of influencer and business development, space for a long time, and sales, just sales. And I saw a clip of him recently. He was on a video podcast, with a guy that does, real estate. Grant Cardone's gotten into real estate a ton, but this guy, and this is what's so great, is on the show, he's saying, "Hey, Grant, let me tell you about these deals that I do." And Grant goes, "Well, hold on. So wait a minute, like, who has the financing? But how do you, what's the difference between that and that?" I thought those were the same thing. It's like, no, there's this form and then there's this one. And you're leaving the bank out of it. And Grant sits there, he's supposed to be the man, right? And he's like, "Bro, you just blew my mind. I had no idea you could do that." And it was something where they basically were leaving the bank out of the equation of "Oh, you don't have to go to the bank." He's like, "No, man, you just leave them out and then you do this thing." And he's like, "And you can do that?" And he goes, "Man, I just feel like I've been doing everything wrong."
Yeah.
He's a multimillionaire, whether you like him or not.
Yeah. No, listen, it could be great. Right.
Right. But he's like, "Oh my gosh, you can do that?" And he goes, "I do it all day long, baby." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where I want those who are listening to just, when they hear our words, to go, "But what if what we're saying is true?
Yeah.
What if what we're saying is really better?" Then the question becomes, what do you need to do to get on the train? Right? If that's where you want to go and the train goes there, and even though you can't see the full path, it's like, what do you need to do to get on the train? And so I want to wrap us up, and I'll give you the last word, Wes, but I want to wrap us up with the answer to that is you need someone who's been there before. You need a path to follow. And I would say this, you need to get there as quick as possible. "Oh yeah, I just start walking. It's 60 miles that way. Can someone give me a ride?"
Yeah.
Can I get a ride? Yeah, sure. There's a fare to pay. Okay, cool. But I'd rather not walk.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, that's wesyounglive.com. That's your programs. That's what that is. If people are really serious about finding a different path to success.
And I love it. And I think, kind of last thought on it is we have seen examples of, in our industry, it says it'll take you 10, 15 years to get to this place. And consistently, we see that that's not true. Justin is a great example of that. Cody's a great example of that. All the advice, I could give you 150 advisors just that that are great examples of that didn't do it that way because they just chose not to play that old game, because that's what that game produces. But instead, there's a different kind of game you can play that will increase, and not only for you increase your profitability and quality of life, but for the clients you serve, and ultimately add to the enjoyment that everybody has in the process. So I'd leave you with that quote again. It's not the shortage of time that should worry us, but the tendency for the majority of time to be spent in low quality ways.
Yeah. And our encouragement to you is not to be discouraged by that, but to recognize that if you can still hear us, you've got breath in your lungs, you've got time, and we want to help you make the best use of that time. So as always, thank you for listening. We really do appreciate and frankly need you who are listening to take 3 minutes to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That's the one that really frankly matters the most. You can also, I think, leave some stars on a rating on Spotify and such, but leaving those reviews, Apple has just decided this is the way we measure if it's a good show or not. More than downloads, more than everything. So do just take a minute, leave us an honest review. If it's a 1-star review, you can just email that to me. I'll post it for you. But no, leave an honest review. We appreciate that. And we appreciate you listening. And as always, thanks for your time.